You're moving into a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. You've just crossed over into
KFUGLP, Crescent City, California.
That is indeed us. It's 11 o'clock, straight up, Just Paul with you. The show is community service, and I'm joined live in the studio right now, as promised, by Mr. Grant Werschkull from the Smith River Alliance. Say something there, Grant.
Hi, Paul.
Hey, there you are. Right on. You're loud and clear.
Right on.
So how are you doing this morning?
Very well. Nice to be here on Elk Valley Road and in these special facilities.
It's our, at first, before we got the gravel in the parking lot, we just referred to it as the KFUG compound, and which seemed to go with the whole vibe of the post-apocalyptic vibe of Elk Valley Road.
Danger.
And then now that we have that, and we're going to have a sign coming up here as soon as the weather gets finished this winter, then it's the KFUG campus. Much
right
more
on.
Like Google.
Right
on. That's what we're going for. So how are things at the Smith River Alliance? What's happening?
Well, things are well. We're always pleased to get good news, and there was a press release, which we'll probably talk about later, from the Forest Service yesterday about the Little Jones Creek pilot project being signed and approved. That just occurred this week, and we'll probably see something in the triplicate about it, but close to 900 acres in that project, forest restoration. There's some timber that will come out of it, and a lot of important fuels work in the upper Middle Fork area around the Little Jones Creek off of Highway 199, and that's really, really important for the safety of our community. So we can talk more about that, but I always am pleased to report on projects where there's high collaboration and cooperation among many diverse entities, and you had them all there.
So, you want to start talking?
Sure, let's do that.
Jump into that. It's the now the project you're talking about. It's the collaboration here, the Smith River Collaborative Group.
Yes, that's it. And so you have our two local tribes, and that would be, since we're right here in Elk Valley, you've got Elk Valley Rancheria and the Tolowa-Dani Nation, the county of Del Norte, our Del Norte Fire Safe Council, which has really been a leader in identifying where are the most important fuels and project areas we need to be involved to provide community safety. And of course, partners at Six Rivers National Forest, their staff they are the staff for the collaborative, and they do a great job. And then you have a number of environmental groups, Friends of Del Norte, EPIC, the Klamath-Siskiyou Wildlands Center, and the Smith River Alliance. And also you have industry represented with the American Forest Resources Council. And so all of those entities are the Smith River Collaborative. And we got launched a little more than a year ago, thanks to a grant to the Smith River Alliance from the National Forest Foundation, precisely to do these types of projects, to work collaboratively. You might say, working in that zone of agreement. What is it that we can agree on that really is of critical importance to the health of our public land forests and to the safety of our communities? And so that's why this project's, just a big win and a big victory for our community. I'm very excited about it.
So over and above all the, the political issues of, having, 80% of the lands here in Del Norte County off the tax rolls and what anybody thinks about that, or what the philosophical arguments about forest management, this is just basically dealing like boots on the ground with Gasky could burn down and we could lose all of this forest if we don't take care of it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely right.
That's the zone of agreement?
The zone of agreement is that, Paul, and it's also an acknowledgement that we've had more than 100 years of pretty sustained fire suppression. And, with great intention, hey, something might start, we'd put it out. And there's a consequence of that, in that your forests change. And in addition, we have had a lot of timber harvest. And usually what comes out of that is we do some planting, and then you have plantations. And those plantations and the suppression of fire, those two things together alone, can mean that you have a recipe for these mega fires. And that's what you saw with the Chetco Bar fire. That's what you saw, in a sense, with part of the Biscuit fire. You see that all over California. So the whole point is, how do we do things in a more preventive, proactive way? Because you can spend millions on fire suppression. But if we want to improve our forest health, and if we want to protect our communities, there are other things that we can do than fire suppression to make our forests healthier and our communities safer. So another really recent victory, and the county has been awarded a grant from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and that grant's just a little less than $300,000, and that specifically is for updating and improving the fuel breaks, what we call shaded fuel breaks, around the town of Gasky. And that was an application that came through the collaborative, the group that I just mentioned. The grant will go to the county. They're the point entity on it. And our Alder Camp, which is the camp just on the other side of the Klamath, where you have inmates that, they didn't get, they're not there because they were involved in really serious crimes, but serious enough crimes where they have to do service work. They are phenomenal forest crews. And so they're doing a lot of the work, and this is basically just redoing. I guess you could kind of think of it as mowing the lawn.
Yeah.
In terms of this shaded fuel break around the town of Gasky. And that's...
So the shaded fuel break refers to just undergrowth then?
Exactly.
Is that what
it's your all those ladder fuels, huckleberry, salal.
I'm sorry, let me jump in. So the Alder Camp crews are actually really, really cool. Are they really good?
Oh, they are fantastic.
I see them out at the lake a lot.
They are absolutely fantastic. They're very, very well trained, well managed. They have the best equipment, and they are just an incredible workforce.
That's fantastic. Next time you pass one of those red trucks someplace, give them a little wave.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So those two, reflecting on that National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant, that's a really, really, really important thing for the town of Gasky. And so there'll be some press on the triplicate about that, I would guess, over the next few weeks. But, those are the kinds of investments that you have to do if you want to protect your community.
Now, stepping in with the collaboration here in the collaborative group, doing this work, coming up with this plan, isn't this something National Forest Service or the state would ordinarily or should be doing? Are you filling a vacuum that was evacuated from some sort of service, or are you just sort of coming in and trying to just be proactive and working outside the box as far as forest management goes?
Well, it's an excellent question, and really think of it as this: think of it as a team.
You're going to give me a feel-good answer here.
Well, no, it's the truth. The collaborative has no staff. The staff and the team is Six Rivers National Forest and our district staff.
Okay.
So just think of them as the team, but here's the challenge. If you do not have a group of these stakeholders representing these different interests, they could be doing all sorts of planning, all sorts of thinking about, hey, we should do this, but there's environmental review that has to be done. And if some group is going to appeal that project that they think that the Forest Service, on their own might think is a good idea, where are we? Where we are is then we're stalled. A bunch of money has been spent on planning, and we have no project being done. So it's not only the planning, but it's also going after money. If you have a collaborative, you can go after money that the Forest Service on their own has a very, very difficult time getting.
Okay.
So it really does take that partnership.
Does it also undercut any sort of threats for about environmental reviews and subsequent legal challenges if you have organizations like Smith River Alliance involved?
Well, what really happens is you have those different entities involved, and you heard me say,
the candy cane man.
You heard me say that the environmental groups involved would be EPIC. The Klamath-Siskiyou Wildland Center, Friends of Del Norte, Smith River Alliance. Okay, right there, because those groups tend to pay close attention to what happens on our public land, if they are sitting down at the table working together with the Forest Service, and you have the American Forest Resources Council participating as well, guess what?
Yeah, it's all kinds of credibility there.
Your recipe for success just went for, I wonder how this will go, to, oh my gosh, everybody really likes this, but we need to make this change, we need to make this refinement, and then we're sure that everybody's on the same page.
Yeah,
and so that's the kind of iterative and collaborative exercise that is so essential to on the ground results. And I just want to give a plug to our county supervisor, Jerry Hemmingson. He is a co-chair of this collaborative with me, and if we're driven by anything, it's outcome. Hey, that's really neat to have a meeting, but what we really measure our success by is outcomes. What are the projects we're doing on the ground? What's the funding we're securing to get those projects done? And Jerry is just as obsessed about that as anybody. And I totally agree. That's the key. It's let's get these outcomes because there's so much to be done. So right on question about the Forest Service, they're an absolutely integral part of the team.
But to have so whose idea was this to put together this sort of meta group?
Well, it's been happening in other forests around the nation. And there's an entity called the National Forest Foundation. And they get some public money. They also get money from philanthropies, foundations. And we saw that there was these collaboratives in other forests, and they had a grant program saying, hey, if you're interested in starting a collaborative, here's how you apply. So I think in 2015, I submitted an application to the National Forest Foundation. We got the grant, and in 2016, we were rocking and rolling with our own collaborative.
Wow, that's amazing. So on the ground then, what have you accomplished thus far?
Well, the two projects that there are now funding and all environmental review approved for are those two projects.
Okay.
The 300 acres of shaded fuel break around Gasky, and then that press release that I've just given you, which we'll probably see in the triplicate within an issue or two, for the up to 900 acres the Little Jones Creek pilot project. Now that project, you'll actually see that happening potentially over several years. All that doesn't happen in year one.
Yeah.
It happens in phases because there's a certain season that you do work. And but there's, as I mentioned, there's up to 3 to 3.5 million board feet that comes out of that. There's a lot of very, very significant fuels work, particularly associated with roads. And the county will be involved in implementing those. The Alder camp crews will be assisting. And then there's also restoration, where you have plantations that are overly dense and the trees are just, not healthy. So there's really wildlife habitat benefits in doing that type of forest restoration.
Sure. But thus far, though, the work of the collaborative group has been to sort of lay these projects out, and this is
Correct.
the beginning then.
Correct.
Okay.
So I have to say, you've busted me in terms of I can't say that, okay, this acre's done because we've had to line up the funding and have the environmental.
It wasn't. I was getting background. I wasn't trying to bust you. Because I think that's fantastic. That area and the Little Jones Creek. I mean, the last couple of fire seasons we've had, there have been active fires in the watershed, I believe. Right. I mean, the 3 years ago or so, and the big bad summer we had here. That was the Coon fire and the Bear fire, and they were up higher. Were they up? Were they up like above like Bear Basin? And stuff,
they were up at some elevation.
Okay.
But in fact, when I mentioned our Del Norte Fire Safe Council, they took the lead in helping us with our community fire safe plan, and in that plan, one of the very highest risk areas to just catastrophic wildfire is exactly where that Little Jones Creek pilot project will occur.
Wow.
So, that's an example of identifying first, then making that your focus area. And we'll need to update that fire safe plan, and the Fire Safe Council is working with some people to get grant funding to update that. And then that'll be a community process, and we should actually promote that through KFUG when there's public meetings, because this is the publication, the Community Fire Safe Plan. You can see it was done in, I think, 2005. And a lot of the fuels work has been done in this. And it's time for an update in terms of, is that still a priority? If not, why not? And, what are the absolute top projects we need to be doing? So it's time to update this. And it'd be neat to come back and, just have a little program about that. And there might be somebody from the Fire Safe Council that would come too.
Sure. Excellent. Now, as far as people keeping tabs on you guys and seeing what's happening with the collaborative group, where can they go? Is there information on the Smith River Alliance about the collaborative group? Is there some?
Well, there is. Right on our home page, there is on the right some information about the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant, and we have actually profiled the collaborative in previous e-newsletters.
Okay.
So that information would definitely be available on our website. And what I think is going to happen, and I think the collaborative is going to get their own kind of link or website. And we've just been operating from a minuscule budget. But we will be kind of developing some of those resource materials. But you can find information on the website, absolutely, homepage.
Are you so through the Smith River Alliance and the funding that you found, the grant to begin the collaborative? I assume that the Smith River Alliance it's all nonprofit, it's all grant funding, it's all raising funds and
well,
getting
yeah,
out
the
there
Smith
beating the
River
bushes for
Alliance,
it.
and we certainly welcome donors, and I'll make the pitch. If anybody is feeling year-end tax-deductible contribution, go to our website. You can donate online, and there's a place where it says support SRA, and under that there's a link to do that. But also, I'm very pleased to report we have some really wonderful business sponsors and partners, and locally, just think of Rumiano cheese. And, down in Humboldt, you've got Wild Berries Marketplace, you've got Pearson Building Center, Cocotat, and Chimney Craft is another local one here, and Crescent Ace Hardware. So these are all businesses that have been a huge help to us. And so, we pretty much get it done based on individual donations, foundation donations, but we're also as you've probably watched us now over, quite a lot of years, we're very, very competent at developing grant proposals for public funding, and particularly where you have restoration and on public lands, there are funding sources to go after, and we do that. And so I would say, to just look under the hood, probably 60 to 70% of our annual budget is public funding, and then the balance is all private and corporate and business.
Now, public funding meaning grant funding.
Grant funding.
Oh, so but to do that, to know where to go and to go after the grant funding, and to be able to also drum up and create all these partnerships and build all these bridges with local businesses and industries, that's quite a success story. I mean, you guys are good at what you do.
There's no question about it. And, it doesn't come easily. You have to be a little obsessed, a little OCD, as some people say.
And I just want to point out that while Grant is running down all of these facts and figures and history and things, he's not looking at anything. There were a couple of times you closed your eyes, and I know you were picturing the website. And you were right. So, it's all there in your head. That's is that the OCD part? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it is. I'm afraid that's true. And I also want to really credit, we have a great organizational team, and Patty McCleary, who you've met, we share the executive director function, and both of us, we've worked for a lot of different entities. She was the executive director of the Washington Water Trust, purchasing water rights in the state of Washington. She was the Pacific Program Director for the Land Trust Alliance. That was multiple states. That was her beat. I was a project director for the Nature Conservancy, and did a lot of work in the private sector for all sorts of consulting exercises that were very, very valuable. And so, just that band of experience. And, we have multiple staff that fisheries biologists and people that are very competent. Some of them have done their master's thesis work in the basin, and so it just takes a real team to sustain this kind of stuff.
I'm interested in the sort of the stories, the histories of entities like Smith River Alliance who've been around for a time and have succeeded and doing what they're doing. Maybe it's because of running KFUG or something. I'm interested in how that works and how I mean, we have There's so many questions going on. We have such an interesting sort of environment here in that whatever the political stripe in Del Norte County, everybody seems to agree that we need to take care of all the wonderful wilderness and the water, everything here, no matter whether you want to hunt in it or go hug a tree in it. You know what I mean? Conservative, liberal.
I totally know what you mean, and I totally agree too. And I using the strip mine threat as an example, I mean, how exciting and empowering was that to see, from our Chamber of Commerce to our City Council to our Board of Supervisors to, thousands of people, just so much support for, wait a minute, this wouldn't be a good thing to be strip mining in our headwaters. And I think it's very, very inspiring for us when you have that type of just really consensus about what do we do. And well, in this case, we needed to stand up and really say, wait a minute, this would not be a good thing.
Let's do this. Let me take a break, thank a couple of underwriters, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the threats to the North Fork and the most recent threats. Let's see. KFUG Community Radio. The show is Community Service. Just Paul with you. I'm talking to Grant Werschkull from the Smith River Alliance about all things Smith River. We'll be right back. Today's broadcast is underwritten in part by Green Bicycles, makers of Happy Endings Tea Mix and Ocean Bounty Flour Mix, locally produced, clean green certified plant nutrients. Whether your grow is small or large, indoor or out, Green Bicycles' all-natural, sustainable plant nutrients help ensure your crop's quality from strong roots to fragrant flowers. Green Bicycles, because those in the know. Check out Green Bicycles on Facebook or at greenbicycles.com. That's GREAN bicycles.com. And stay tuned to KFUG for info on the first ever California-Oregon Jefferson Cup, a cannabis trade show coming to the Del Norte Fairgrounds in January, presented by Green Bicycles. The future of agriculture, right here in Crescent City. Green Bicycles, another proud underwriter of your community radio station. Become a friend of the Del Norte Library by attending their next meeting, Thursday, January 18th at 6 p.m. in the Del Norte County Public Library, 190 Price Mall in Crescent City. The Friends are a group of like-minded people dedicated to supporting our local libraries through book sales and other fundraising endeavors, as well as volunteering and community outreach. Whether it's taking a shift at the Smith River branch or helping sort and price donated books and DVDs, the Friends of the Del Norte Library are an integral part of both the present and future of our local libraries, as well as being the voice of the community before the library's governing board. Learn more and become a part of the Friends Thursday, January 18th at 6 p.m. in the Del Norte County Public Library. New board members will be elected and the coming year discussed. That's Thursday, the 18th of January at 6 p.m. at the library. KFUG Community Radio, Just Paul with you, Community Service, the show, and I'm joined by Grant Werschkull from the Smith River Alliance. We're talking all things Smith, and right now we were talking about prospective car trips. So yeah, about driving those that network of roads that we have back up there. So are they still in good shape? It's been a few years since I've been up there, and I know that the fire crews have been up taking all of the 17 ins and all the other the roads that run way back up.
Yeah, by and large, our road system is in good shape, and the county deserves a lot of credit for maintenance that they take over responsibility for maintaining some roads, and then the Forest Service others. And that's always a priority because you do need access not only for recreation. Hey, it is a recreation area, but also in terms of fire and other things. There's wood cutting. There's so much that goes on back there, and something that you said is so spot on about there's a lot of diversity of uses and interests, but there's total agreement in how magical this county is. Low population, but extraordinary natural resources and opportunities to experience those natural resources, and that is not common.
No, not at all. Not at all. I totally. Everything from going way back, taking 45 minutes and driving and getting back up, getting lost on the backside of French Hill and getting back up. And I don't know if you've ever done this. Have you ever stayed in the cabin at the Bear Butte Lookout?
Many times.
Really. I really want to do that sometime.
Oh, you've got to do that. We actually had a board meeting there one year.
Did you? Oh, cool.
Yes, we did. So I think, and Pearson Building Center, who's been a great corporate sponsor of ours. They built that cabin.
Oh, did they
paid,
really?
Oh, they
Wow.
paid for it, and that was a cooperative project with the Forest Service, where Pearson Building Center came and said, "Hey, we want to do something like this. Build a cabin someplace, but the deal is, we'd like to use it a bunch." And so that was the quid pro quo. Is they paid for it, they built it, and now they get to use it, a bit each year.
I had no idea. That's very cool. I said we were talking to also when we got wrapped up about going up Canopy Creek, going up Little Jones Creek, driving around in the backcountry. What's ahead for the Smith River Collaborative Group?
Well, the next project that it appears they will be focusing on, the next pilot project, will be in the Canopy Creek drainage area. And again, there's old plantations to deal with, so forest restoration opportunities. Undoubtedly, there will be more merchantable timber to come out. Of course, as I said, no old growth. And a lot of opportunities for wildlife habitat improvement and other restoration. So it'll be that same kind of full suite, different project components. And but it's going to take another year or maybe even more just to do the planning. And again, that's all done in partnership with the Forest Service.
Now, we just before the break, we talked. We sort of started getting into the latest attempts to mine on the North Fork of the Smith River. There was another push from this guy. What was it? The guy in Utah who was
Congressman Bishop. Yeah. Well, that was good. So that was in September. He sent a letter to to our Trump administration folks and basically said, "Hey, we object to these baseless withdrawals occurring, that we're not done with due process." I mean, literally, he used those types of words in his letter. And what was great is within days, there was press here in our triplicate, where our counties, I think the chair of our Board of Supervisors, Chris Howard, kind of said, well, wait a minute, if this is really going to be a review of what happened, we'll be heard from.
Yeah.
And so, what it does is it calls into question what took a couple years under the Obama administration of many public meetings, many comment periods, and there was something like, depending on how you count them, 45,000 to 70,000 comments.
Wow.
99% in support of a ban on mining for 20 years in the headwaters of the Smith. And there were some other areas where the particular company had existing claims. And so that entire area was around 100,000 acres. And so that included the headwaters of the North Fork, and then a part of the Chetco, a little bit of Rough and Ready, and then Hunter and Pistol River. There's some claims there. But, there was amazing public input on that process. And then in January this year, after that all due process was done, the Obama administration announced the mineral withdrawal, a 20-year mineral consider it a ban on mining, basically, for 20 years. And so, that was done. And so then you saw September, Bishop's letter going, writing to the administration saying, oh, that was baseless, there wasn't due process, there were problems, we should review this. We should review all these.
All these. Was it specifically the Smith River?
In his letter, he specifically talks about this mining ban, the one here in the Smith.
Huh.
And
is he tight with the company, with the mining company?
Well, we don't know that, but we do know that the mining company is continuing to lobby, and advocate in all the places that they would want to try to get a toehold. And so, actually, you might not have seen this, but then something else came out from Secretary Zinke just within the last few days, where he's basically issued an executive order, and it is to review all critical minerals. Now, critical minerals is actually a very there's certain minerals that are named as critical minerals, and there's some are not. And so he basically says he wants to see a review of all critical minerals. Let's make sure that they're coming from secure sources, and what do we need to do to begin mining them more here in our country if they're not coming from secure sources. And I'm just kind of putting it in my own language. And so that starts a whole process of, reviewing critical minerals. Now, what's interesting, and I went online, there's a document from our U.S. Geological Survey that addresses critical minerals. And at the present time, nickel is not one of those. And so maybe through lobbying or other things, people will say, "Oh, well, nickel should be there." We will have to follow this. The alliance and the community, we will pay attention and we will follow this. And the Secretary's executive order asked these other agencies to do some homework and then get back to him in 60 days. And then it also is a green light for Congress to follow up and do some things if they need to facilitate, better mining and even reducing environmental review process for securing critical minerals. And now since we're speaking, we're particularly concerned about our project being the headwaters of the Smith. Nickel, USGS in their own documents say that we get about 43% of nickel from recycled sources.
Oh, wow.
And they also say that looking out over the next 20, 30 years, all of our sources are secure. And I did look in their document about critical minerals, and as I said, nickel is not listed presently as one. So, but these are the kinds of things that are going on that you have to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And so that's the concern, that's the challenge, and we'll just have to see. Now, on the good news side, I do want to report that our neighbors to the north, Oregon, have done some really, really valuable things to provide additional protection. And I can report on two. First of all, the Oregon Environmental Quality Commission voted unanimously in July to create the North Fork Smith as an outstanding resource water.
Wow.
And what that means is it recognizes this extraordinary water quality that exists up there. And, for the Gasky Community Services District, they know that. That's where they get their water. And, of course, then the North Fork comes into the Middle Fork. So it's really all of our water down here, too. But the point is, it's the first such designation in Oregon and the first in the Pacific Northwest. There is no other river that's been so designated as an outstanding resource water.
Really?
Exactly.
Now, does this happen on the state level, or is this a federal?
It's states. Just state of Oregon. Before, huh? Oregon Environmental Quality.
Because California has a similar designation, doesn't it? Don't we?
California has a similar designation. They have Mono Lake. And Lake Tahoe included. I don't think there's any river bodies.
Wow, really? Okay.
No.
All right.
And this was contentious. And it was a multiple year exercise. There was a very, very substantial petition that was provided with many, many organizations and then entities also and agencies voting their, exercising their opportunity to write in support of it. And actually, Elk Valley Rancheria had Kevin Malou from Elk Valley Rancheria was on the advisory committee for the process. He was the only person in California that I know of that served in that capacity.
Really? Kevin? I just saw him. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And of course, Elk Valley Rancheria and the Tolowa-Dani Nation both supported the designation, as you might expect. But what's very important about that designation is it does link into our Federal Clean Water Act. And basically it engages the anti-degradation aspects of the Federal Clean Water Act. So as long as we have a good, strong Federal Clean Water Act, this designation is very, very important in terms of protecting the North Fork of the Smith from strip mining.
But that's the question, isn't it, though, as long as we have a strong Federal Clean Water Act?
Well, it does call that into question, and some of this is new territory. I don't know to what degree that there's been litigation about this in the past, but let's just say it's a good thing. And there was due process done, and the objections to it actually came from the ranching and farming industry because they were concerned, not that there's any ranching or farming there, there is none, but they were concerned that the precedent,
right.
If the North Fork Smith is done, that might mean that maybe the John Day or some other area.
In Oregon, this was a big bone of contention, wasn't it?
It was
where
contentious.
It was played out.
It was contentious, and but it was a unanimous vote by the Environmental Quality Commission. So that was in July, and then just this month, the 7th, I think, of December. the Oregon Water Resources Commission. They voted, and that wasn't unanimous, but it was 4-1 on another lengthy multi-year process to withdraw the North Fork of the Smith in Oregon from any future water appropriations. And what that means in more common terms is that it basically protects the North Fork Smith for in-stream and public uses, so that the water that's in the stream, they want it kept there. They don't want it taken out. And they also provided some direction in terms of groundwater. And so, again,
so no damming or diversion, anything like that?
No damming and diversion, but it's also about pumping the water out for other uses. You know, it's explicitly saying these are for public uses. This is for fish, this is for, wildlife, and it's for human consumption. And, it doesn't say in fine print, it's also for mining.
Yeah.
So in that regard, this is also potentially a very helpful designation, and our congressman supported it. And speaking of the leadership of our elected representatives, I just want to shout out to our Senator Mike McGuire. He got through both the Assembly and Senate something that I think really helped with both of these Oregon designations, because they were done in Oregon, but it was really neat that the state of California Assembly and a Senate had both passed the Smith River Watershed Protection Resolution, which he was the lead author on. And they passed that out of both the Assembly and State Senate, basically, directing that the North Fork of the Smith, the headwaters of Smith, should be protected, and kind of highlighted all the very important downstream resources and public and community uses. And so, I think that's the type of teamwork that it really takes to have some success in these cross-border exercises.
And Mike McGuire is an energetic young. I call him the boy senator because he seems to just young. Boom, and it's fantastic. And it seems across the board, do we not, both state and federal level, have some pretty decent folks standing up for us?
Oh, we definitely do. And that is, thank you for calling that out. I mean, when you think that Congressman Huffman won the popular vote here in this county, and people are really looking to his leadership, whether it's last chance grade, whether it's health care, you name it. And then on the state level, Senator Mike McGuire being so energetic, you just love it. We're fortunate to have these people.
Who was the other congressman? I forget. I'm so sorry.
Mike Thompson?
Was it Thompson who was at the event up on the river?
Oh, that was Oregon's Congressman DeFazio. Peter DeFazio.
That's it. Exactly. Yeah. He was really interesting too, and seemed to be right on board with everybody.
Well, he is, and then he's probably got 20 years on Congressman Huffman, so it seems like they have a very good working relationship, which helps us.
It's a cross-generational sort of thing. That's fantastic. Exactly, and they do seem to work together. And listening to them. Adam Spencer was interviewing them for a video, and I'm just standing there running the camera. I'm like, wow, I really like these guys. I'm really glad that they're representing us and our concerns.
Yes.
So, all right. So there was a little feint at maybe reviewing the what is it, the mineral withdrawal, the 20-year mineral withdrawal, and it was, I do remember from that event, which was what, in 2016, up on the river that day. Was it that long ago?
Yes, it was. I think it was October 2016. We had a nice little break in the weather.
Yeah, it was really
rare that month.
And it was doing the video, and we had Thompson, or not Thompson, but DeFazio and Huffman, and Hemmingson. Jerry got up there and spoke as well, and it seemed like the one thing I didn't get, there was sort of a celebratory air about the whole thing, but it did seem like nobody was like, oh, okay, we won, this is over. It was like, all right, no, we do need to steward this and to keep an eye on it, and that seems to have been the case in what's happening.
Well, that's right, and multiple wise people have said, whether they're talking about the coast or they're talking about rivers, these very valuable public resources, they're never permanently protected. You're always protecting them. There's always, the stewardship and restoration activities, and just sometimes just outright, protection, because things get rolled back.
Yeah.
And so I think will take a lot of vigilance, and in that regard, I think our community's up to it, and we're certainly grateful to be able to be part of that, and we'll be flagging things as they come along, because it will take some vigilance.
Just a quick question, just as an aside, as I don't know how this works, sort of the mechanics of, you've got a congressman from Utah who says something. How do you find out about it? I mean, is there like a newsletter that you get that's like threats to our local environment? I mean, do you have people watching everything that every congressperson says? And
well, you do, and the way that works is there are many organizations and entities concerned about these issues. Mm-hmm. And it kind of gets to something that we've talked about in this interview, and that is how extraordinary these resources are here. They're nationally and internationally significant. Mm-hmm. On the downstream end, you look at the internationally designated biosphere reserve, that our Redwood National and State Parks are here in our basin. Mm-hmm. You have ancient forests. There's more above ground carbon in these old growth redwood forests than any other forest on earth. Wow. And these forests are very, very limited, how much of this there is. And the fact that we have Redwood National and State Parks in the lower river, you've got the Smith River National Recreation Area in the mid and upper basin. Yes, you have designated wilderness areas. It's just like, this is internationally significant. So you've got national groups like Trout Unlimited, American Rivers, American Whitewater, and then local groups, Klamath-Siskiyou Wildland Center, we mentioned them, California Trout, and Friends of the Kalmiopsis, Kalmiopsis Audubon, all these different groups all have their antenna out. And these national groups, they're paying a lot of attention to what happens in the Natural Resources Committee in Congress mm-hmm. for the House. And that's where Congressman Bishop is. Okay. Because, he's actually, they're attempting to roll back some protections on the Grand Canyon. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's some monument areas that they're shrinking and things like that. Yeah. So people are paying a lot of attention. And, with digital communications these days, you can hear about it in minutes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so that's what's happening. There's a great network out there, and everybody's trying to use their resources wisely. And if there is a real threat, what do we need to do about it? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Grant, let's see. Let's take a break again. It is 17 minutes away from noon. See, I told you we'd turn around and we would have talked for 45 minutes. So we'll take a quick break and we'll come back and, talk about the future of the river and what 2018 holds hopefully, positively holds for the river and for all of us here and for the Smith River Alliance. You are tuned to KFUG Community Radio. Today's broadcast is underwritten in part by Engine 101 Smokehouse, Crescent City's only barbecue restaurant, where everything from the brisket to the slaw is made fresh every day. Stop in and take out or call in your order for fast delivery in Crescent City. Engine 101 Smokehouse, 1091 US 101 North, open Friday through Monday, 4 to 9 p.m., or until all the meat's sold out. Call Eric and the crew at 707-460-6262. Order some fantastic barbecue and thank them for supporting KFUG Community Radio. Today's broadcast is underwritten in part by the College of the Redwoods. Spring 2018 enrollment is now open for CR and classes begin January 13th. Go to redwoods.edu/get started or call your CR campus in Crescent City at 707-465-2380. College of the Redwoods. Explore, connect, succeed. KFUG Community Radio. Paul with you, just Paul. It is 16 minutes away from noon. Community Service, the show, and I'm joined by Grant Werschkull from the Smith River Alliance here. And we were just talking during the break about extreme downriver things, more specifically the estuary and coming through the floodplain down here. And there's a lot of concerns. I mean, everybody, you think about river and you think about fish and fish spawning and getting up the river and keeping everything nice and healthy in the forest and all of that, and then we'll come down and the river rolls through the floodplain and some agricultural land. The story's not over there. You've got a whole set of issues there right at the mouth in the estuary.
Right on. And you know, it's interesting in the way that you describe that, just giving some context. So estuaries, every estuary, just think of it as a giant nursery, and many fish species, and also other aquatic species, and you know, vertebrates too, like birds. You know, estuaries are a nursery. So they're incredibly important to your overall health of your salmon fishery and other things. So we're keenly interested in it. And I think since the last time you had me here on the station, there's some really fantastic projects we've been able to work on, again, cooperatively down there. And I just want to acknowledge our local Del Norte Resource Conservation District. We have been partnering with the RCD, and think of the RCD as the private landowners down there, and those would largely be, that's mostly private land in the estuary. Farmers of multiple stripes, you know, from large dairy farms to you have the bulb farming, a variety of types of farming, and including egg production at a commercial scale through the Alexander family Eco Dairy. And, you know, they're just that particular dairy. I think they're recognized as the largest organic dairy north of Fresno.
Really?
That's big.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And then you have some other family dairies. The Tedson Dairy is very big, and it's been there generations. And I remember being in a room seeing 3 generations at one time. Really, it was very neat.
That is cool.
But you know, the work to do restoration has to be a partnership, collaborative endeavor. Because let's be clear, it's private land.
Yeah, you're going to be impinging upon them right off the bat.
Not only that, but one has to be welcomed onto somebody's land to think about and consider, well, what would be restoration projects to, for example, improve habitat for salmon. And we tend to be very focused on salmon, so I can give some examples. Generally, all estuaries, and the Smith would fit this bill too, we've had simplification occur. And by simplification, I mean, you know, historically, before our development, floodwaters would come down and water would just spread out over this entire lowland area. Water slows down, and the sediments and nutrients that it's carrying, that's incredible. That adds to the productivity of estuaries. That's why they are so productive, because it's slow water and you've got these complex habitats. And you would have had all these little myriad sloughs and backwaters and, you know, logs kind of jammed up here and a little log jam over here. And but again, just think of it as just this thing spread out, lots of great habitat. Well, in order to farm,
you got to stop.
You got to simplify it. And so it's like, okay, well, let's keep the stream over here because I'm going to be farming here and I'm investing in the tilling it and the planting, and it makes total sense. So the restoration to be done is where it's feasible and cost effective. You want to improve that complexity of habitat. You want to bring back some of that flooding. You want to bring back some of that habitat where it's not so convenient to farm. And what makes sense from a farmer's point of view is if you have frequent, continual, chronic flooding, guess what? It's not the best place to have a house, and it's not the best place to be farming. Or if there is going to be a farming, it's something that you want to have, okay, well, on the time of the year where it's not flooded, animals might be able to go out into part of it and graze and move around. But generally you see streamside corridors getting bigger, you know, to allow that migrating around of a channel, if you will, and for the floodwaters to spread out and slow down. And what's really neat is there are funding programs that allow a farmer to be compensated straight away for, you could say, sharing that land for improving wildlife habitat, wildlife and fisheries habitat. Those are the kinds of things that we're interested in. And we got a grant from the State Coastal Conservancy a couple of years ago, and we're partnered with the Del Norte Resource Conservation District in identifying restoration opportunities. And so we'll be turning around our results on that early in this next year. And some of the things are kind of no-brainers. I'll give you an example. On Morrison Creek, there is a chronic flooding problem there where Fred Haight Drive and Morrison Creek intersect.
Is that all this last winter? Morrison Creek was running over Fred Haight Drive.
Oh, totally.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, and there's it's just a chronic flooding problem. So we knew that was an issue, and the RCD did, and so our application to the Coastal Conservancy was supported by the Board of Supervisors and the RCD and our congressman and our state senator and our assemblyman.
Wow.
So people are like expecting to get good results.
And what's to be done in that case?
Well, in that case, the kinds of potential setbacks that I was talking about, having greater buffers along the streams. But you have to do your homework. It's premature for me to say, oh, what's a fix? But I can assure you, if we went to that crossing right now, Fred Haight Drive in Morrison, everybody would agree, oh my gosh, look at your culverts. They're kind of squashed down. They're full of silt. Yeah. There's not the capacity there to carry the full stream when it's even in a maybe 3-year flood event. And so whether there's a bridge there, how that gets straightened out, that's all work for engineers and, people that are really very competent with, hydrology and geomorphology.
Sure. But I mean, is the issue isn't just basically getting Morrison Stream past Fred Haight. It's also after that.
Exactly.
Getting it to
and so on the downstream side, both sides of that stream are owned by the Alexander Family Eco Dairy. And I know that they are very, very supportive of working on restoration. And of course, as they should be, they would be compensated if they were going to lose tillable land. That should be secured through a conservation easement. So they're compensated for that. And so there's ways to do it. You can look at other estuaries where there's been really very successful partnership programs doing, and there's grant programs to do the work. And so that's where we really shine, is being aware of those and partnering up with the private landowners and the public agencies to highlight, where are the priority spots to go. And so that work's underway, and there's more to be done, and we're excited to be part of it. And we've known for decades that the estuary was a real important area to focus. So we're glad to be down there. And Marissa Parrish, who's a full-time, she's our program coordinator. She's just been doing a fabulous job. She got her master's degree from Humboldt State, actually, on that whole habitat interface between beavers and salmon. And it was really neat. I actually attended her thesis defense.
I'm sorry. I'm just that's I could see that being like a classic breakdown, right? Because beavers want to stop water, and salmon need open water, right?
Well, no, actually, but it works because think of the beaver as adding habitat complexity.
Yeah, exactly.
They're slowing the water down.
They're giving back eddies. They're spreading out the.
So in that way that I was describing the kind of the more pre-European development natural state, beavers were prolific around there, and there was a lot of that habitat that they loved, and so it was really and Marissa worked so well with the private landowners, and she spent so much time down there, and so anyway, it's just great to have a person like that. Working with us.
It's tempting to sit back. That how big all of agriculture in Delaware County happens there on the Smith River floodplain, and you've got generational farmers who've been growing lily bulbs there for a long time. There's been some stuff in the news in the last couple of years about pesticide runoff contributing to dying off of I think a plankton based food in the estuary. And you've got, of course, the Alexanders who seem to really understand their surroundings and are trying on a very big level to fit in and to adapt and to become a part of them. It's tempting to sit back and go, oh, here's industry, here's ag business, here are these people, it's like $7 or $8 million a year for the county, that come into the county because of the bulbs, that they're going to sit back and, twirl their mustaches and they're not going to care about the river. But whether you're talking about the Crockett's or Dahlstrom and Watt or the Alexander, they all care about the river.
They absolutely care, and I really am grateful for the way you kind of set the table for this part of the conversation. They absolutely care. And moreover, agriculture is an absolutely essential part of our community and our economy. It has been for, 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's all about how people can work together, because a healthy river, everybody wants a healthy river. We want a healthy economy. And guess what? We're marketing, whether we're marketing bulbs, eggs, cheese, dairy, that we can market from the point of view that this is a model basin, where we are being the best stewards that we can. And so that's what we really support, is that type of an approach. And I think shining a light on it is good. And, it isn't positive to be attacking one entity or another. I mean, that just isn't very productive. And, you want to work with the parties that are interested in the long term, and that's what we do.
And I think that's very important for a lot of reasons right now. And that is that here we have, and you talk about this being sort of sort of a model of sustainability and of cooperation. We can be, just because of our scale in Delaware County, whatever the reasons are, that, whether it's the fact that nobody's anonymous here. You run into, if you make an enemy, you run into them in the Safeway, so it doesn't pay to do that. You're doing something that it seems to almost be out of fashion nowadays, and that is going and find people you might think have disparate points of view and motivations, and bringing them together under the aegis of commonality, at least common endeavors to keep the river clean, to safeguard the resources that we have, because they've been good to us thus far. We should continue to be good to them, and to be building bridges between people that you wouldn't think would want to have bridges built between them. It's a rarity in today's social landscape, I think, and so congratulations to you and the Alliance for doing all of that.
Thank you. And I think that there are a lot of people out there that want that approach, and sometimes there's hype out there for calling people out, or that sometimes negativity breeds more negativity. And but working in that zone of agreement, and having people, people feel good to be part of the solution. People want to be part of the solution. And why should we hold our county back in terms of going after funding that allows us, this county, this watershed, to show we know how to be part of the solution. We know how to work in the zone of agreement. So let's celebrate that. Let's be competitive. I don't want to see, all the grant funding go down to restoring the LA River. People like to come up from LA. Here, speaking of travel and tourism, people like to come up from LA and go, "Wow, this is what it looked like, huh?"
Yeah, this is really. And no, I just know. I remember from the '70s all those television shows. I always wanted to go to the LA River and have a car chase in it.
They did that in Terminator.
They do that in everything. I love that. So looking ahead, then the year ahead, we've got about just a couple of minutes, and we will have spoken for an hour. So let's talk about the cleanup that's coming up then.
Thank you. So this last year, we actually gave more attention on the coastal zone, and our partners, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, there's some properties along Elk Creek, and they really helped us get access there, and it was a huge success, but it was successful because we had a lot of volunteers.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I'm counting on KFUG.
How many people
I think we turned out between 50 and 60.
Nice.
We had Coast Guard people, shout out to the Surfrider Foundation. They turned out a bunch of people, and just people from all other, interest groups. It was fabulous. Our one of our county supervisors, Roger Gitlin, was there, and but just people really worked, filling up 2 20-yard dumpsters.
That's a lot.
2 smaller dumpsters, and then there was almost 2,000 pounds of metal.
Oh my God! Yeah,
that's in addition to the 2,000 pounds of metal. So,
and where was this? This was along Elk Creek.
Yeah, a lot of that was Elk Creek, but it was also, there was some beach cleanup too, and it just shows what we can do as a community with a little organization, preparation, and thanks to the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority and Ted Ward for picking up the tab. on the dump fees, because
Wow.
we were able to do all that, and they covered the fees.
That would be a lot, too.
It was a lot.
That's fantastic. Wow, good work at the Solid Waste Management Authority. I like Ted.
So we'll give you a lot of lead time so
Yeah.
you can help us recruit volunteers.
So this last year, this was in September that you did this?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And, historically, we've had a pretty major focus in the mid and upper watershed,
Mm-hmm.
and we will continue to do that. So I think what we might see is maybe another coastal cleanup day. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
we do that on the designated coastal cleanup day. And we'll also be partnering with Elk Valley Rancheria and some of our same corporate partners on that. But then we'll also have one up, probably jumping off from the boat ramp there at the Forks.
Okay.
And then we'll do some things, because you really, by the time September rolls around, there's a lot of places that need attention.
That's
in the
true.
national.
Yeah, that's true. I've seen that along the banks of the river too. It's nice. It's beautiful. Oh, look, a tire. And it's rare, but yeah, still you go, okay, how'd that got here? But it was after El Nino year. The one thing I've never taken part of and I've always wanted to is the fish count.
Hey, you got to sign up for that. Now, you can find that again on our website. People should, so it's smithriveralliance.org.
There you
It's
go.
very easy to find.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have an annual fish count. There's a training on the Friday before the main count Saturday. So I can't tell you offhand.
And is that typically early summer? Is that when that happens? Or when
About
am
the
I
middle
wrong?
of the summer.
Middle of
It's
okay.
usually sometime in July or
Okay.
really early in August. But that's people are wearing wetsuits and hoods, and you're in the water for a while.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we do a training the Friday before, which is required
Mm-hmm.
if people haven't done that. But it's magical being underwater and seeing, all these wild fish. It's pretty amazing.
That's really cool. That's very cool. And that happens what? That's just, you do that on the South Fork? You do
We
that
do on
in
the
a number
South
of
Fork
different
from the Alliance's Rock Creek Ranch
Mm-hmm.
property. And so we've been hosting it there since 2000. And it's also, from a fisheries management point of view, the data set goes like 20 years before that. So we were
wow.
continuing a longer data set. So it's neat to really see, okay, this is how our coastal cutthroat trout population has looked over that long period of time.
What have you seen?
It's very steady.
Oh,
it's
good.
solid. Yeah. The coastal cutthroat trout population is very solid.
That's reassuring. You don't hear things like that often. It's always this fishery's failing. This species is almost extinct. It's nice to have just a nice steady thing that goes.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing you want to be steady on.
Exactly. Grant, it is 2 minutes past 12. Thank you very much. Is there anything you'd like to get in before we sign off today?
Thank you so much for hosting us, and a shout out to the community for all the partnership together.
That's a lot of partnership out there, and good work doing that, bringing everybody together about something over or around an issue that we can all agree upon, and that's just the health of our surroundings and our place in those surroundings. So thank you very much, Grant.